What's up everyone? Today I'll be going through my round 2 AFL tips and predictions. Last week in round 1 I ended up getting a total score of 7 out of 9 and I ended up again scoring in the top 11%. So far my 2 tipping weeks have been really good. We'll go through the games that I got right and incorrect. On Thursday I said that Carlton would beat Richmond. I said it wouldn't be that big of a margin and it ended up being pretty close. It was a good game. Collingwood Sydney, this was a very good tip for mine. I went the Swans. I thought realistically they could have gotten the job done and pulling off the upset, and they did. Another pretty good tip to get right, Essendon and Hawthorn. A lot of people ended up tipping the Hawks at the end of the day, but I went with the Bombers and they won by 4 goals. I think I said they would win by 4 goals in my video. The Giants to beat North was a pretty simple tip there. The Cats to beat the Saints, I said it'd be close in my 6-point margin, ended up being really close, 8 points. And then Gold Coast and Adelaide, the Crows almost came back from 36 points down to win this game in really terrible conditions. Unfortunately, the Sunday games were, they were the disappointments for myself. I went the Dogs instead of the Ds. Now this was obviously the upset call. I just thought, the Dogs, they looked good against Hawthorn in the practice matches. Melbourne didn't look very good against Sydney, but I guess it didn't really matter. Dogs were really flat. We'll talk a bit more about that later on. Port was a free tip against West Coast, and I went the Lions thinking that surely would not go 0-2. But obviously, Freo were way too good. Freo had a really good game. So, unfortunate finish, 7 out of 9, but it still wasn't too bad. Let's take a look at my tipping competition to see who's on top of the leaderboard. So, I am placed 187th out of 1,259. I would definitely take that. Now, the best scores for round 1, all these people went in the Joker, which means they get the double points, as you can see. I think Chucky Man with a perfect margin and a score of 7. No one went the perfect score this round. We had 1967-2021 with a score of 8 and a margin of 1. We had a few people do okay. Remember, the Jokers are a chance for you guys to, get a 1-up on the competition, but I'm probably going to save it for later in the season. AFL Goat HQ also with a score of 8. And then the total score, well, obviously we have someone who used the Joker. They got 4 in opening round. In fact, they used the Joker twice, so they've already wasted it. Hazzy White T, I don't expect him to be winning this with a score of 18 and a margin of 40. I'll also quickly go through my fantasy competition for you guys to have a look at. Graz is actually currently leading with a score of 2,161. Now, I want to show you this. I ended up getting a score of 2,022. Now, just look at my team right now. I'm still so gutted about this. I would have got an extra 137. I had gone on the emergency. I forgot to have Barnett as the captain, so I messed up the loophole because I didn't know how it worked. I lost 137 points that round. I couldn't get Tom Green as the captaincy. I reckon if I would have done all that, I genuinely would have been like top 50 plays in the entire world in fantasy this week. I had a good round of fantasy. Unfortunately, I just messed up when it mattered most in that stupid loophole. Last week, the most liked comment was from Zidelaide. They got 101 likes and said, go to a random Sunday game and support the umpires. So hopefully I ended up getting 3 big calls or more correct, so I avoid that punishment. We'll go through them now. Richmond Carlton, I said the Tigers would score 7 first half goals, and they ended up scoring 7 in the first half. The next one in Collingwood v Sydney, I said that both sides would combine for less than 145. The total combined score was 171, so I was a little bit off on that one. Then I said in Essendon v Hawthorn that the Bombers would come back from 20 or more points down at any stage and win. And at one stage they were 8 points down. They still won, but I didn't get that one correct. This one I was really close on. I said that North would win any quarter against GWS. They lost the second quarter by 4 points, and they lost the last quarter by 2 points. The next game in Geelong v St Kilda, I said that any side would kick the match winner with 5 minutes left, and I would have to give that one a point. I mean, Dangerfield got the match winner with a minute to go. That sealed the game, basically. It was a match-winning goal. I think under all the definitions, that was the match winner. And then I said that Suns would lead by 30 or more points at any stage over the Crows, and that one stage are up by 36. So there you go. I've already avoided it with 3 big calls correct so far. The next 3 I got incorrect though. I said Ugle-Hagan would kick 4 or more goals. He got 2 goals, 3. I said the Harley Reid would get less than 10 disposals. He had 16. And I said the Dockers would record 5 more behinds and goals. They did the opposite of that. They scored 14 goals, 9. So that was probably my worst one of the entire lot. But you know what? It doesn't matter since I ended up getting 3, so I avoided last week's punishment. And for this week, let's go through the clip from my Freo Brisbane stream to see how many big calls I need to get this week to avoid the punishment. We'll do the 1 spin, only the 1 spin. What does it land on? We are going to be doing 1. Let's go. All right. Only the 1 this week, which means I only need the 1 big call to avoid the punishment this week. And I feel like because it's the 1, I'm going to go for a few more outlandish big calls in this video to make things more interesting. What a game to start things off on the Thursday night. We've got St Kilda and Collingwood at the MCG. This is going to be an absolute ripper, and we want as many people down as possible. There's actually a link at the moment going for a 2-for-1 offer. So if you want to go and bring a mate, if you buy one ticket, you get 2 general admission tickets for that same price. So there's a link in the description. Definitely check it out because St Kilda, we want to get a massive crowd for a game like this. The Pies currently are sitting at 0-2. And they could be 0-3 after this game if the Saints win. They could be 0-4 because they got the Lions the next week. So it's going to be a tight one. The Saints are definitely a real chance at an upset here. Obviously, last week the Saints played the Cats, and I thought at times we were good. At times we were a bit sloppy. It wasn't the most complete performance from the Saints, but it's always really difficult to beat the Cats at GMHBA. The skills and especially the efficiency with the goal scoring was definitely not at its best. And it was a bit disappointing to see the Saints not really want to win the game until the end when it was a little bit too late. We kicked those last 3 goals and it was only like 1 point. I thought, man, we could actually maybe win this game. But it wasn't to be because Dangerfield got that last goal. So hopefully, we don't start 0-2. And Collingwood, they've started 0-2 with 2 disappointing losses against the 2 Sydney sides. Yeah, they're probably 2 of the premiership favourites, but regardless, I expected better from Collingwood. I definitely expected them to fight for longer, and they were down by as much as 50 at one stage. The scoreboard probably doesn't even do them justice. Like, realistically, they got 3 junk time goals at the end, but Sydney's midfield were way too dominant. Nick Dacos was realistically the only shining light. Their forward line was a bit dysfunctional. Their defence wasn't at its best, and overall, they just got exposed by a really good Sydney side. So I feel like for the Saints, we definitely could lock down Collingwood's forward line because it's at the moment a little bit of a problem. I feel like a defence. Hopefully Sinclair's back. The Saints could definitely outrun Collingwood with their legs. I just feel like the midfield battle, we weren't great last week in the midfield, so Collingwood could get it, ahead of us in that one. But we just need to be more accurate. If we could be a bit more efficient inside 50, I definitely see the Saints winning this game. The Saints have all their home fans. It's a big game, Spuds game, ceremonial. Collingwood are 0-2. The premiership hangover. That last year the Cats started 0-3. So why can't the Pies start 0-3? Screw it. The Saints are winning this in the upset. I can't tip against my side on this one because it's that big of a momentous game. So I'm going the Saints to win this game by 15 points. I reckon we get it done. And my big call, Max King kicks 5 or more goals. Next up, on the Friday night, we have Adelaide taking on Geelong at the Adelaide Oval. And I actually think this has the potential to being one of the games of the round. I'm really looking forward to this one. I think I might be streaming it as well on the Friday night. And I think we could see a good game of footy. I mean, Adelaide last week, they can be excused for that loss. I think people are a little bit quick to judge the Crows after that performance. Yeah, they were pretty poor, but they played too many tools in wet conditions up at Heritage Bank or whatever it's bloody called. Gold Coast are normally quite good there, and the fact that they came back and almost won shows that they're still going to be a decent side, but they've got to stop losing so many close ones away, the Crows. Like, they got to stop doing that. I'm not sure if Tex Walker's back, but he would be really handy for them, obviously, and you hope the Crows can increase their scoring power a bit this week because they only had 1 goal to their names up until half-time. And obviously the Cats, they didn't score heavily as well against the Saints. It was just an inaccurate game, as mentioned before. But I thought the Cats were just slightly better and slightly more convincing for most of the game. I thought Ollie Dempsey realistically tore us a new one. He definitely deserved the Rising Star nomination. He was everywhere, particularly in that first half. Jamie Cameron was pretty good early on. A few other plays for Geelong I thought were quite good. Obviously, Dangerfield kicking that match winner and really providing the bits in the midfield. So, yeah, the Cats are probably not likely to win this game because at the Adelaide Oval, I think the Crows are really, really hard to beat. But who knows with Geelong this year? They're a bit of a wild card side. I mean, people are saying they'll slip. People could believe they could finish maybe even in the top 6. I think they're definitely finals chance, and if they win this game, they're going to get a really good start to the year in 2-0. But I think Adelaide at the Adelaide Oval, they're a better side. I still think the Crows. I think it's going to be a really tight one though. Good viewing for your Friday night, but I'm going to just take the Crows in this one. I'll go by 7 points. My big call that the Cats kick 5 or more consecutive goals at any stage. The next game we have on the Saturday, we have got the first game at Marvel Stadium this season between North and Freo. And I'll tell you what, this is also going to be a pretty good game, I reckon. I think it's going to be a whole lot more closer than what some might suggest, given, obviously, last week, Freo were really, really good against Brisbane. After quarter time, they turned everything around, and they played a much more attacking style of footy, and they just realistically made Brisbane panic at every moment. Sarong had 46 disposals. Jackson was really good. I thought Fife had a good return and a miss. He kicked, 3 or 4? He's just such a good player, honestly, up forward. North Melbourne also were pretty decent and gallant in defeat, although I think the scoreboard flatters them a bit. You look at the scoring shots, they were 13-4, I'm pretty sure, and I think the Giants had double their scoring shots, so they just missed a lot. They lost by 40 points around that, the Kangaroos, but realistically, they probably should have lost that game by a bit more. So I thought they were still competitive. They showed some good signs. They scored a decent total, and they're a real chance in this one because obviously last year, the same result, North actually beat Freo away from home round 2. The Optus Stadium road trip to Marvel was a bit of a long one. They got the 6-day break. North have a little bit more rest. They're in front of home fans. I think they're really going to want to put on a good performance. Their new youngsters, McKercher was really good. Sheasel continuing to play well. Wardlaw. I think North are really a good chance here, and I think they're going to shock Freo. Yeah, I think Freo aren't going to expect North to play as well as they are going to play this week, and I'm going to actually tip them in the upset. They're going to start the game well, and from that point onwards, they're going to just take control of the game. It'll be a close finish though, but we are going to back in North here. I hope they get the win, and we're going to go North to win by 12 points. My big call, that North lead for 75% or more of the game. Next up, the MCG, we've got Hawthorn take on Melbourne. 4% of tippers going Hawthorn, and that's probably for right reason because, yeah, Melbourne looked quite good last week against the Bulldogs. I didn't expect them to be as good as they were, and after half time, they were definitely the more dominant side. They tore through... Oh, stop it! Stop! The D's, to be honest with you, made the Dogs look really poor, especially after half time. Oliver and Gawn, how good were they? Petrarca was also good. They were back to their best, I feel, the D's, and that's probably a performance that they needed to just let go of the hate that they were getting, I guess, the backlash, in a way, the D's were getting, and that's why I tipped against them, to be honest with you. So they proved me wrong. They definitely ripped through the Dogs' defence, and they made them look really poor. So it's going to be tough for Hawthorn to win this. They could maybe pinch it if they're really accurate and convert well, because that just wasn't the case against Essendon. They made a game for it, to be fair. They were really good, I feel like. They were probably the better side for 3 quarters, but ultimately they just weren't good enough. I thought Ginnivan and Scholl were pretty good in their first games for new colours, but it's going to be a tough one for the Hawks. I think their defence is just too poor. The D's could put on a big score against them. This could be high scoring. Hawks might fall off in this one, so I'm going to go Melbourne to win by 43 points, and my big call that the Hawks have a goalless quarter. On the Saturday night, we've got Sydney and Essendon taking on each other at the SCG. Obviously, the Swans have started the season really, really strong with 2 wins and 2 convincing wins, one against Melbourne at the SCG, and then an even more convincing one against the reigning premiers, Collingwood, at the MCG, and they were really, really good. They honestly were the best side for 4 quarters. The scoreboard didn't do them justice in the first, but then they took control on the scoreboard after that. And then that last quarter, the Pies got a few junk time, but I thought overall Swans were better for 85 to 90% of the game. Isaac Heaney started his season off phenomenally. He was just really, really strong once again in the midfield. Chad Warner also had a really strong game. Up forward, Logan McDonald. So I think Sydney are currently a very, very decent chance of winning the flag this year if they continue, but hopefully we don't see a drop-off like we did last year. And I expect them to start 3-0 against Essendon, who they did start with a win against Hawthorn, to be fair, but it wasn't the most convincing win against the Hawthorn side that you could make the argument could have won that game. Essendon were probably the better side in that last for sure, but not really in the first 3 quarters, so it wasn't the most convincing win, although they ended up winning by 4 goals. Archie Perkins was really good, so was Jake Stringer up forward. So there's still question marks on Essendon. I haven't seen enough from Essendon this year to know whether or not they're going to be competitive with these sort of sides. I think Sydney, though, they could win well at the SCG. I hope they make a game for it, though, Essendon. But ultimately, you got to tip Sydney at the SCG. I think this is a safe bet. Can't really see an upset. I could see maybe a close-ish game, but I also could see more likely a bit of a smashing. So I'll go Sydney by 36 points. My big call that Sydney kicks 7 or more goals in any quarter. The next game at 1 PM in Ballarat at Mars Stadium, we've got the Dogs and the Suns. This is probably the most difficult game to tip, if I'm going to be honest with you, and I'm hoping that I can attend this game and make a video for it. The Dogs last week were very poor. You could argue that they were the sour Dogs. If you know, you know. But they just didn't play to the standard that we expected of the Dogs after halftime particularly. I didn't watch the first half that much. They were in front at one stage. They just used the ball terribly. McNeil had like 6 turnovers. Why did they sub Sanders off? They weren't kicking the ball to Norton. Jamara just didn't have his day up forward in front of the big sticks. And ultimately, like players like Bond, McRae, Libber, they just weren't at their best, and I thought they got exposed by Melbourne's midfield. So it was a really difficult day for the Dogs fans to really endure. They weren't very good at all, and then they fell away late in that last quarter. Another bad loss, round 1 against Melbourne. It keeps on happening, so I'm just going to stop tipping them. And obviously Gold Coast starting the season 2-0, I think for the first time ever. If they win this game, it'll be their best start in history, and I think they're a real chance this year at making finals. The Suns starting 2-0 with a good win over the Crows at their home ground. They did fade off again, which is a bit of a concern for the Gold Coast. They're starting to fade away from games, but I thought at the end of the day, they were the better side from what I saw. Anderson had a really good game. Rao starting the season as good as it really could be. I think he's going to be on 6 Brownlow votes at this stage. So it's tough because it's at Mars. They normally play the ground there quite well. I mean, at least last year they were really good against Adelaide. And it's just hard to be convinced with the Suns yet away from home. That's what's going to turn Gold Coast from a good side or a decent side to a great side if they can start converting a lot of these away games into wins. So if they win this game, it'll do them so many wonders for them. And I think after the way we saw the Dogs play, yeah, we could see a response, but Gold Coast for mine, I think they're going to get the upset. The Gold Coast Crips again should be up and firing. The Suns for mine, they've been more convincing, so we'll go the Suns by 19. A big call, Rao and Anderson combined for 60 or more touches. The second Sunday game, we have the Tigers and the Power taking on at the MCG. Obviously, the Tigers on the weekend were actually pretty impressive against Carlton. A game where a lot of people thought that the Blues would win quite comfortably, but it didn't end up happening. I thought Richmond kept up with the Blues for most of the game and we were quite impressive. And even despite the 3 injuries they endured, they still kept up with the Blues. And yeah, you can make the argument that Carlton should have maybe won it by a little bit more. They were probably the more convincing side, had more inside 50s, they just made more mistakes. But Richmond won't be losing many fans after that one. They were actually quite good and maybe they'll be a half decent side of the G this year still. They obviously beat the Eagles at the Adelaide Oval last week. There's not a lot you can take out of this game because, for one, they were expected to win quite well. They maybe could have won by more, actually, because I had a look at the scoring shots, and the Power ended up with 24 behind, which is a lot. What I do think will happen in this one is that Richmond will stay competitive and level with the Power for a half, and then Port Adelaide, they're just going to gain control in the second half and really take the game away. So I'm going to go the Power to win this game by 33 points. My big call is that the Power win the second half by 30 or more points. And the last game we have, this is at Optus Stadium. We got West Coast and the Giants. Now, last year, for some reason, the Eagles ended up winning against the Giants. I don't know how, but from that game to this game, I think there are 12 changes to the Giants list. So the Giants, they're definitely going to win this game. It's just by a matter of how much, because let's be real, the Giants, they're first. The Eagles are 18th. I can't see a world where the Eagles win this game. I know it's at home, but it doesn't matter because the Eagles have lost a few games at home by over 100. Could it be over 100? It could be, but I would like to say no, because I thought West Coast, they showed some signs that were sort of positive against Port. Yeah, they could have lost that game by more, but I thought they were decent. They kept within a couple of goals. As I said before, they just ultimately weren't good enough. Port Adelaide showed that they were way too strong. Harley Reid had a decent debut, so hopefully he has another good game for them, you know, in front of the home fans against the Giants. I wonder what the Giants will end up having their percentage on after this round, because they had North last week. They could have again won that game by more. Were pretty dominant. They'll be dominant again in this one, you would think, because, you know, their midfielders, their forward line, and even the defense, they're all working really well. I mean, up forward, Jesse Hogan, he's already on 10 goals. He kicked 6 last week. He's in the contention for the common medal. If he kicks another bag this week, he could definitely be a real chance. So I think the Giants definitely win this game. I'm going to go big one. I'm going to go 67 points. The Giants win by, and my big call is that the Giants record 35 or more scoring shots in this game. So those are my round 2 tips. I went with the Saints, the Crows, the Kangaroos, the D's, the Swans, the Suns, the Power, and the Giants. I went for a few upsets because there were always going to be a few upsets. So hopefully, like the Collingwood and Sydney game last week, a couple can pay off. But until then, I'll see you guys soon in my next video. Hopefully you enjoyed it. And if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel, leave a like. And tomorrow I'll be releasing a round 1 week vlog for, the entire week of round 1 and all the stuff I got up to. So stay tuned for that and a lot of the more content that I have to come.